Wait. No. Oh, God, hang on. Not okay. Okay, there we go. Right. Okay. That's the YouTube stream set. Okay. Good afternoon. It's been quite a while, is an understatement, from my last podcast, which is now or broadcast, which is now called the COVID Crackdown, to commentate over the COVID pandemic crisis we are now facing. And I promised these would be daily or weekly updates, but then as we see, it's been 3 weeks. If you look back, my last podcast was 3 weeks ago, and we're nearly a month in to from when we in the UK have been in lockdown. Italy much longer, and way more longer for China. However, there have been talks of easing it down, such as in Wuhan, where transport into the city has been allowed. I'll skip straight into it, however, with a letter that was delivered to almost every UK home resident, and it is a letter by the Prime Minister, and this was just when he was before or did enter treatment for his coronavirus symptoms. It says here, I am writing to you to update you on the steps we are taking, and it shows you that there is an enclosed instruction leaflet, which was included as well, but I'm not going to talk about that. And these are more for informations on people who can't access online, especially the elderly, which we'll talk about. So it's written here. I'm not sure when this was drafted, but I'm sure it was released just the day before he was admitted into hospital or during it. And he gives his thanks here. He says, I want to thank everyone who's working flat out to beat the virus, in particular the staff in our fantastic NHS and care sector across England, Scotland, and Wales and Northern Ireland. It has been truly inspirational to see our doctors, nurses, and other carers rise magnificently to the needs of the hour. Thousands of retired doctors and nurses are returning to the NHS, and hundreds of thousands of citizens are volunteering to help the most vulnerable. It is with a great British spirit that we will beat coronavirus, and we will beat it together. That is why at this moment of national emergency, I urge you, please stay at home and protect the NHS and save lives. Signed, Boris Johnson. And he really did, as well as praise in this letter, which was sent, he would further give on praise, which I will talk about, because as you know, after the letter, which was sent on Tuesday, 7th of April, 2 weeks ago, on 6th of April, so it was a day after he was admitted into hospital. He was admitted into a hospital in London for what was at the time announced by his Secretary of State, Dominic Raab, as mild symptoms, and which then developed into very aggressive symptoms, and then he was transferred into intensive care. And so that happened, and so the powers which shift a bit. Dominic Raab then had to deputise for Boris Johnson and had to take over responsibilities and positions which were necessary, such as I think he had to chair the meeting on number 10 Downing Street, but he didn't fully take on the role as Prime Minister, and he slowly got better. And as we will talk about, yesterday he was released out of hospital. So that was at some point. Getting back onto the timeline, 3 weeks ago, and so the structure will be week 3, week 2, and last week. So 3 weeks ago, I put into sections. I have 3 copies of The Economist here, so we'll do it in that format. I should have it bookmarked somewhere here. So week 3, it sort of gives an introduction into what it thinks and what is going on about how Britain will transition into managing with the coronavirus. And so what it talks about here is centralized decisions, centralized decisions taking place, the government being able to continue with more actions. And also what it talks about here is a lack of party politics. And what that means is such things as, Brexit's done and over with. I mean, talks will go on. And there is a bit of a grey area when it comes to talks because obviously travel's been restricted. But that's put on ice, as far as we know. And what it means by a lack of party politics is that on March 25th, Parliament voted to shut itself down. And so obviously it's through from 3 weeks ago. And so that's all really. And so there's been more centralized decisions, and what that means is, as I said, more government actions, which means unified intervention into lockdown obviously had to be put in place, but the government had to outline what it means by that. Enforcement, so the police would have to take decisions to lock up people, and transport systems and businesses would have to be affected, and that's why the Chancellor took out a sum from the Treasury, and then obviously had to hand it and say, this is what we'll offer to businesses and the self-employed and whatever. So they had to take actions and plans. There were no bills, and this is more of an emergency matter, and the government, as I said, are more hands-on when it comes to these sort of things. So that's what it talks about. It says here, in some ways, what it really means is, what it says here is, in some ways, Britain is more united than it has been for a long time. Bickering, as I said, over Brexit has been shelved. Party politics has been suspended. Parliament's been shut down. And then the next part of this is the call of volunteers in thousands. So as you know, it says here, ministers are marshalling an army of volunteers to help the health service. There have been volunteers to bring about help and aid and support to the NHS. I think I've reached to about 250,000, and then there have also been a number of doctors and NHS staff which have come back into the NHS. I'm not sure about those numbers, so that's what it references. And it says here, and the virus itself is no respecter of rank. And as I said, it's almost that blitz spirit, isn't it? There was a good Economist article on this, and it's almost parallels which are irresistibly drawn up between Second World War, Britain, and 2020 COVID Britain, and that's that the sort of unified spirit that we must all get together. We're in it all together, and it really is highlighted here by the Prince Charles is among those who are infected. So regardless of class, COVID has affected almost all sectors of society. But then there's some who would say the poor are still going to be exploited out of this. The virus is going to exploit the poorest, the most disadvantaged. Those in the BAME community have had, so the Black, Asian, minority ethnic, I think that's what it stands, the ME, I'm pretty sure it stands for, have suffered the worst from this, actually, and there's been investigation called in, I believe. But there's been a few eyebrows raised about, are some people disadvantaged when it comes to accessing help, and is it too late for them by that point? But then again, it says here, the virus is no respecter of rank, and it enforces the fact we must all come together if all sectors in society are being affected. Then it goes on to talk about the age gap. And so what's been highlighted by schools is that I think the more tech-savvy youth and I guess the sort of later millennials will benefit in work. The younger people will get their work cut out for them, and they'd be able to probably continue on, and obviously connect with their friends online if they do so wish, and well, ideally should, because only individual exercise is allowed. So it's sort of a time to prosper, really, for the online young generation. But what's in it for the older generations? And I've sort of noted down or what is noted here actually in the article is better. For some, the lockdown will compound feelings of loneliness, and loneliness has been an issue with the elderly, and then it won't help when they're obviously being confined in their homes and can't access their friends, talk to their friends, or go about and do whatever activities they can in their community, especially when the community does help the elderly in just carrying on and doing something other than just sitting at home. That's going to be a pain for them. And it says here, only, especially those who struggle to use the internet. It says here in the statistic, 44% of retired Britons say they have good internet skills, which is still, a low percentage. And it doesn't help for those who want to connect out to their relatives. Compared to 95% of students who have good internet use. And there's a stark contrast, and as I said, an age gap there, which is an issue. However, there's actually an interesting fact here, and I think several are told their grandchildren that they experienced worse in the Second World War. And well, we're certainly not getting bombed, so I guess there is a point to that. That if the only hard part is to stay indoors, but with limited contact, then that does give some reassurance on that side. And it says here that experience brought the country together, and perhaps this one will too, but some fissures may deepen. So it's almost like an introduction to what they think will happen, or what they hope will happen, what is happening. But then again, alas, that is 3 weeks ago. So laying on to the second week, so 2 weeks ago, this one's not really in the article, so I'll just say it here. So the Queen's speech was a rare occurrence which happens. The Queen obviously gives speeches, but that's during Christmas, and she's given out her speech addressing the issue. No particular date, however, she did give, as you'll know, a later one, and that was at the occurrence of Easter, and she wants to obviously perhaps raise morale during that time, and it is obviously an occasion on the Christian calendar, so that's why she spoke. However, on Sunday, 5th of April, she delivered a speech, and it was broadcasted as she'd normally do on Christmas Day. And what she said, basically, in the contents of her speech, she thanked vital workers and the NHS staff, which are working, as many of us are staying at home. But to those who are staying at home, she was as well thankful for that. But she acknowledges that there could be many other lives lost without this system of those staying at home and those who need to work, there will, there's less lives lost with people staying at home. But she acknowledged as well the grief of loved ones which have passed on, sadly, and have lost many relatives and friends and family, etc. But in a more optimistic vision, she said that for the future pride in the current generation in Britain, hopefully in the future it will just be like many experiences, such as, again, the parallel to the war, in which hopefully our generation will have the opportunity to look back and say that we have overcome this situation. And but a take-home message was that with this different challenge, which is different to the war, this difficult challenge, which is different to the war, we will succeed. And what was really poignant to me is she said at the end, and to many media articles, by the way, as well, is that we will meet again. We will meet with our many friends and colleagues, but we will meet again. And so, obviously, I mentioned again a week ago. The status on the Prime Minister's absence changed, and he was recovering. And just yesterday, the Prime Minister recovered out of hospital, and he was delivered out of hospital, after which he tested negative for the coronavirus. And he delivered a message which I don't think is uploaded on his Twitter page. I'm not too sure, but there was a video anyway on YouTube which obviously showed a video of Boris Johnson, and he just said he'd like to thank the workers. He just said his normal stuff about the importance of staying inside. I think there was a bit of an Easter message, but he said that as he struggled for air, he mentioned a couple of nurses, but two in particular sparked media coverage over this, and he said that he'd like to especially thank two brave nurses who helped him as he recovered, and at the worst, when he was at his bedside, they stood on guard for him. And the reason why he pulled through was because of their help and many others like them in the NHS. But I can't deliver his message for him. How much I go into detail of him, you must be thinking I must just be my reading off his speech that I've written down. But no, it's just a very nice praise he gave. And the two nurses were obviously Jenny, who I believe was from New Zealand, and Louis, who was from Portugal. If I've gotten the right way around, that wouldn't be a good thing to cock up on, but you get the message on that. And then the Queen then delivered an Easter message in which I think she said that's a loophole I haven't covered over. However, she delivered in an Easter message that the coronavirus will not stop Easter. Christians can celebrate on, and as long as we remember the importance of the Easter message, this pandemic cannot stop such important events such as Easter. Okay, we've covered nearly 20 minutes. Let's just quickly look through this week's edition of The Economist. It's called The Business of Survival. And I guess we'll also look over the outer aspects. There's some things I've missed over, but they weren't priority. So this is the other news. Hungary's leader, Charlemagne, how Hungary's leader gets away with it. And this is obviously Hungary's leader is, this was a bit interesting, this one. So you obviously, Hungary's prime minister is, I forgot. Hungary's prime minister is this even the right edition? God is on the tip of my tongue, but Viktor Orban. There we go. There we go. God, I hope I don't even get to that current if I ever meet the man. Anyway, so what this has been is that Viktor Orban, as you know, is widely known as a leader who has been authoritarian in his stance on his hold on government, at the very least. And some may say that he is just a virtual dictator in Europe over several constitutional changes that has happened. But in the light of an emergency, a law enacted on March 30th means Mr. Orban can rule by decree, bypassing Parliament until the corona crisis is over. So what they're basically suggesting here is that Viktor Orban is taking advantage of the coronavirus situation in order to push forward more power. Or maybe he could prove them wrong by then backtracking on this once the coronavirus is settled. And government in Hungary the Hungarian legislative and government can function as normal. But who knows? Only time will tell. So that's one part. Does COVID-19 vote Labour? Let's see what's into this. I can see a lot of messages in the corner of my eye on Instagram. Now I can finally talk about it, now that the sound bites are over. The return of the opposition. Oh, there was some social media comments about this as well. The Economist liked it. One thing I really like is the visuals on it, which are related to it, and the many statistics you can see at the bottom. The flag of Spain. I mean, sorry, the map of. Is that even Spain? Sorry, the map of France. Look, it's been 20 minutes. Who will watch this after this? The many statistics, graphs and everything like that is quite great when it comes to The Economist. And it's not just on the economy either. It's on a wide range of issues, from government to fashion to politics, to a lot of things. So that's just, I was just looking at the pictures on that one. That's pretty pictures. So their graphics and diagrams and whatever are very catching. This is not an advert for The Economist, I should really show. But yeah. Okay, I was just supposed to make a little comment on that. Yeah, that was eye-catching. It's supposed to be on Labour, but obviously that's the hammer and sickle, which, although Labour is socialist, and the Soviet Union likes to call itself socialist, is a bit provoking with the hammer and sickle there. I guess they could have chosen the rose. Who knows? So the return of opposition. So this highlighted, I've left a video, so go check that out on GoTo News. So Labour has elected a new leader after Jeremy Corbyn has left, after he was gone. Mr. Keir Starmer is the new leader. The subtitle says here, Labour's new leader should be aware of war socialism. The Labour leadership contest began in one world and it's ending in another. Candidates have swapped crowded halls for conference halls. The new leader will be announced in round robin email rather than as planned. So they had I guess this just talks about how Labour will return, and that's just very right. They couldn't be packed in a hall. It was less ceremonious, pomp and circumstance, really, not by choice, but by action. That for obviously the security reasons, for obvious reasons during this pandemic, they can't announce it in a speech. They had to deliver it by video. Keir Starmer sent out a video on Twitter, which had to be, I guess, retweeted by Labour in order to garner attention. So I guess, yeah, this just talks about what's interesting, though, is that Keir Starmer, once has been elected, in a dramatic sense, he has been ushered in as leader, and as well as that, he also held talks on a very important issue, not just talking with the Prime Minister and saying, hey, I'm the new opposition leader, but is actually talking while Parliament is out of session and it's obviously shut down, has talked with the Prime Minister, but then obviously after that, he has been ill. So it'll be interesting to know how many more meetings the opposition leader will have with the Prime Minister and what that will be on. Okay, turning on to the third edition, as I said I would cover Boris Johnson intensive care. There's some more commentary on that. Oh, 5G. Yeah, that's been terrible, and I guess it shows the amount of misinformation which is going on there. So the oddness about the whole 5G speculation is that thanks, Alice. The whole thing about 5G is that the situation has been people are spreading conspiracy theories. Ollie, I'm not. Anyway, so just for YouTube viewers, I'm looking on my Instagram stream. Oh, we have a question here, actually. Yeah, while I'm on other news. Go live with. Okay. I'll show how many viewers are still in. Oh, there we go. Right. Okay, right, there we go. Jolly good. We're back. See that's a resilient spirit. That the British must have. I'm not taking this as an opportunity to talk like Churchill for a minute and rouse up the entire country so that our spirits are lifted. That's just giving courage to my viewers on my stream who have been neglected for a while. Okay, so anyway, back onto this. So there have been 5G conspiracy theories. It says here, for as long as we have known mobile networks, there have been health concerns about the radiation they emit. At first, people worried that they would cause cancer. The fifth generation of networks, or 5G, aroused fears of headaches, rashes, and severe skin burns. Lack of evidence has not put paid to these suspicions. And so it's important with these people's suspicions and the timing of 5G, which was approved just before the coronavirus outbreak occurred in the UK. And the Prime Minister approved 5G, and the 5G towers are now being put up as effective or have just been before the lockdown occurred. And so obviously this timing, it's created a ruddy, awful mood with people on social media putting that these emit cancers. It's said that there's something to link because the 5G originates from China, and these towers are sort of, I think they're being manufactured in China and they're being inbuilt within Britain, and they're saying, well, the coronavirus is coming from China. Oh, and look, these 5G towers are coming from China. So it's come back to really bad timing. But what I must say as a sort of amateur news provider, if I'm not boosting myself up too much by giving myself that title, this is a misled information or weakly proved. There's a lack of evidence which proves this, and a dramatic action which has been done in front of the responses to these 5G towers is people have started burning them, attacking and what I've seen the worst is people particularly harassing people who are the electricians who are not even working on repairing these 5G towers, and have been harassed because of their work, and they're saying, are you willing to kill us and whatever. And then obviously when these 5G towers, I saw in a TLDR video, they obviously, Jack got, I think, Jack, who normally leads it, was particularly angry because then obviously when these 5G towers are destroyed, then people have to come out and repair them, obviously. So then you're bringing out more workers who have to repair the damage you've done. And whether you prove it or not, it doesn't matter. That's a terrible situation which has happened. I mentioned TLDR because I haven't really seen it much in the news. It's a sort of niche thing, and when the news they believe in is being spread on social media, then the more social media will talk about this sort of crazy situation going on. And one of the dramatic moves which have happened in response to 5G, in response to the response to 5G, is that YouTube has removed an interview with David Icke, a conspiracy theorist, repeating the story, and said it would ban all such content. I'm not sure if that's the exact video, but people have started to re-upload our conspiracy video. Yeah. Oh, actually, one of my viewers have actually mentioned something which is interesting. He says here, China owes us all millions for this, mate. And the Sun actually released an article about a video online on YouTube about how much does China really owe us. Will China owe us in? Okay, didn't mention that, but will China owe us in some sort of compensation to the nations? For the wet markets being allowed to run, which presumably with a lot of mostly could point to China's wet markets, which then allow bats to, such animals such as bats, to sort of have viruses, which would not really go onto humans, but then cross-contamination occurred, and all sorts of things happen. And then there's also the link with pangolins, which arguably, as I said, mostly arguably points towards China. However, there's not enough evidence to look to the root cause. People are in the scientific community are more looking towards obviously a vaccine, which in the long run, if governments choose to have that solution to stop lockdowns, will take a sort of years, at the very least months, but it is presumed years. And another thing on this lockdown situation and solutions to what we could do in the future, I guess government has said, as European governments are easing the lockdown, the UK's government response, as of late as I've seen, is that they will not ease lockdown restrictions. So that's news for us. And but an interesting thing I won't talk about too much in detail is that South Korea hasn't had to have so much lockdown restrictions, although they would have probably been one of the first countries before us to have been affected by the coronavirus. And it's all sorts of, you can look it up, but it's the sort of thing where their response to it, because they were infected with MERS before COVID-19, MERS is a different type of coronavirus, and they had that, I believe, last year, or it might have been 2018. And so South Korean researchers had to think of solutions, and obviously those in the scientific community. And it was more about I think prevention rather than a cure. And it was sort of, what would happen is that when COVID came along, when coronavirus or COVID-19 came along, they would track down the first person who got it, would put out live updates. So, for example, you got a text. We all in the UK got a text by the government to obviously everything, stay inside, help protect others, and support our NHS through doing that. With that, South Korea actually does more of those, and many other countries do more of those alerts. And so what South Korea did is that they alerted in this particular area, if you are in there, I would avoid that area wherever possible, because a person has contaminated the area. And then you would think, well, what about the area which has been already surfaced? Well, if they found on door handles or whatever in metro stations, that they would shut down that particular part of the area. I believe that's how it works. Okay. Okay. Yeah. I've given this stream attention. I've said all I had to say. Ooh, half an hour. I'm not sure if that's a record. It feels like that to me. It feels like, um, and that's good because even if I've had longer streams, it feels like I was rambling through those where I got out the straight information needed. I'm glad that was long, but then again, it was 3 weeks. So I hope you enjoyed this COVID crackdown. Sorry, I hope you thought this was informative. This edition of the COVID crackdown, and I hope to see you in more. I can't promise, but I hope to see you in more regular updates on COVID crackdown. Hopefully, not in another 3 weeks. I hope to see you soon, and be safe. I won't chant those government adverts you will see, protect the NHS, stay at home. You should know it. I hope you do anyway. I hope you feel safe. I hope you stay safe. I hope you feel safe. And obviously, be extra cautious around there. I'm sure you've heard this hundreds of times from multiple people, social media influencers, or the Prime Minister, or the Home Secretary, or Priti Patel. Is it Home Office she runs? I'm not too sure. Or Matt Hancock, which I'm not too sure how he's doing because he fled with the coronavirus, but it seems it's not as intense as what Boris Johnson has gone through. Through anyone, obviously you get the message. Stay safe. I hope to see you then. Goodbye.